in anticipation of Lord Ramachandra's appearance day coming soon, we're going to be reading from Srimad Bhagavatam about the advent of Lord Ramachandra and the pastimes of Lord Ramachandra. From Canto 9, Chapter 10, and we're going to continue starting with text number 5. In the arena of the sacrifice performed by Viswamitra, Lord Ramachandra, the king of Ayodhya, killed many demons, rakshasas, and uncivilized men who wandered at night in the mode of darkness. May Lord Ramachandra, who killed these demons in the presence of Lakshmana, be kind enough to give us protection. There's no purport. And it doesn't say which sacrifice performed by Viswamitra is being referred to, because the main sacrifice performed by Viswamitra only resulted in one demon being killed. Right? Do you know the story of Lord Ramachandra? Your daughter looking at you. You know the story? A little bit? How old was Lord Ramachandra when Viswamitra visited Ayodhya to request that Ramachandra come with him? Huh? Don't know. Do you know how old Lord Ramachandra was when he was married? Pretty young. He was just 12 years old when he left. And when Dasarath was asked by Viswamitra, I've come to request your son to come with me. Oh no. There wasn't any idea at that time about marriage, but it was to take care of these two demons, Maricha and Subahu. Maricha and Subahu were sons of Tataka. You familiar with these names? No? Tataka is a woman, the mother. And first Ram killed Tataka. He was very reluctant because she's a woman. But Viswamitra assured Ram, although she's in the body of a woman, she's a terrible demon, and the codes that prevent one or prohibit one from killing a woman doesn't apply to her because she's a Rakshasi. She eats sages alive. So you have to give protection. There'll be no violation of Dharma, I assure you. Ram said, my father told me, whatever Viswamitra says I should do, you're saying I should do, I'll do. So he did. But then she had two sons, and they're the ones that were defiling his yagya, Maricha and Subahu. So here it says, in the arena of the sacrifice performed by Viswamitra, Lord Ramachandra, the king of Ayodhya, he wasn't king of Ayodhya at that time. He was a 12-year-old boy. Prince, but not king. Killed many demons. Well, he killed Subahu, and he didn't kill Maricha. So I don't know what this is in reference to, or maybe as we've been hearing, when there's discrepancies between one Ramayana and another Ramayana that are authentic or authorized Ramayanas, it is to be understood as different days of Brahma. and different appearance of Ram doing different things at different times. That's how to understand. And certainly Srimad Bhagavatam, Shukadeva Goswami's Ramayana is an authorized version, but it's not consistent with this particular section. It's not consistent with Valmiki Ramayana. In any case, he killed many demons, Rakshasas, and uncivilized men who wandered at night in the mode of darkness. May Lord Ramachandra, who killed these demons in the presence of Lakshmana, be kind enough to give us protection. It's one of the principles of bhakti is to take full shelter and surrender to the personality of Godhead. You're a host? You know the concluding instruction of Krishna in Bhagavad Gita? Sarvadharmam parityaja. You know the verse? No. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna gives many teachings. Primarily systems of yoga, but principles of attachment to the Supreme and detachment from matter. And those formulas are dharmas, duties of mankind. And the final instruction of Krishna in Bhagavad Gita is Sarva Dharmam, of all the dharmas that I've taught you so far, you can set them to the side or subordinate them to one higher principle. And that higher principle is Mam Ekam Sharanam. Mam Ekam, alone, singular. Surrender to me only. Mam Ekam Sharanam. So a principle of Sharanam is to feel oneself protected by the Supreme Lord. There's nice teaching found in Ramayana. It's also found in elsewhere, Padma Purana. There are 6 symptoms of surrender. Here they are. Here's the 6 symptoms of surrender. The first 2 are really easy. Accept things favorable to bhakti, reject things unfavorable to bhakti. Very simple. Anukulyasya sankalpa, pratikulyasya varjanam. And then comes the next one. Rakshikshati vishvaso. Raksha means protection. Rakshikshati vishvaso. Feel oneself to be always protected. So that's the prayer. It's Shukadeva Goswami saying, but on our behalf, to call for the protection of Lord Ramachandra. Protection against demons or other such circumstances. And there's 3 more principles of the 6 principles of surrender. Feel one is maintained by the Supreme Lord. Material consciousness is I'm maintaining. Spiritual consciousness is I'm being maintained. I'm serving, and the one who I'm serving is maintaining me. We do things that have some fruitive result, but that fruitive result from the side of the devotee is the devotee feels this is the property of the Supreme Lord that's being provided for me, for my maintenance, and I'm accepting as my maintenance. And I'm utilizing in service to the Supreme. There's 2 more. Principles of surrender. What's another principle of surrender? Who knows? There's 5 and 6. Who's our scripture study folks? Anyone? Principles of surrender. I'm surprised. You don't know? Yes? Yeah, the sequence is not important.
Faith that Krishna will protect. Faith that Krishna will protect.
Yeah, that's the Rakrishna Titi Vishvaso.
Krishna
Goptritve Varanam Tava.
Acceptance of Krishna as your master. Acceptance of Krishna as your master.
Servitude.
Never forget Krishna. Never forget Krishna.
Yeah. That covers everything. That's not one of the principles of 6 principles of surrender. Did you find it? You looked it up? Internet is slow. Either of you? That's a good quiz question.
Okay. So first is accepting only what is favorable for unalloyed bhakti.
Yeah.
Second is rejecting everything unfavorable for
Mhm.
unalloyed bhakti. Third is having faith that only Bhagwan is one's protector.
Yeah, we covered those.
Yeah. Fourth is accepting Bhagwan as one's only maintainer.
That's the 4th one.
And then fifth is complete submission of oneself to Bhagwan.
Atmanivedana.
Sixth is feeling meek, humble, insignificant.
Dainya.
Yeah, wretched, materially destitute, etc.
Very good. You got it? The last 2? Huh? You found it also. Okay. Full self-surrender and humility. The Lord is my protector. The Lord is my maintainer. Accepting things favorable for bhakti, rejecting things unfavorable. That's 6, right? So in this verse is specifically requesting protection from the protector, from Lord Ramachandra. 6 and 7. O King, Shukadeva Goswami speaking to King Parikshit, the pastimes of Lord Ramachandra were wonderful, like those of a baby elephant. I don't know if that's a compliment or what it's supposed to mean. In the assembly, where Mother Sita was to choose her husband, in the midst of the heroes of this world, he broke the bow belonging to Lord Shiva. This bow was so heavy that it was carried by 300 men. In Valmiki Ramayana, it said they had to pull it on a cart with wheels. 300 men pulling the bow on a cart with wheels. They could not even 300 men could lift it. It was a big bow. There's another version of Ramayana that this did not take place in an assembly. There were ministers, etc., but it wasn't like, kings and princes. They had already come and tried and were unsuccessful. It was kind of like a private little request of Viswamitra, please bring the bow out, see if this young 12-year-old boy can lift the bow. Variety. This bow was so heavy that it was carried by 300 men, but Lord Ramachandra bent and strung it and broke it in the middle, just as a baby elephant breaks a stick of sugar cane. Thus, the Lord achieved the hand of Mother Sita, who was equally as endowed with transcendental qualities of form, beauty, behavior, age, and nature. Indeed, she was the goddess of fortune, who constantly rests on the chest of the Lord while returning from Sita's home after gaining her at the assembly of the competitors. Lord Ramachandra met Parashuram. Although Parashuram was very proud, having rid the earth of the royal order for 21 times, he was defeated by the Lord, who appeared to be a Kshatriya of the royal order. Here's another little different versions of the Ramayana have different explanations of the power of Sita. She was younger than Ram, but she was able to lift the bow. What? 300 men only? And she was a little 9-year-old girl, could lift the bow? Here's the way it's described. There's about 4 different versions. See if I can remember them. One was Janak wanted his daughter to be trained in domestic duties, even a 9-year-old. So she was given the assignment to do some cleaning in the royal palace. And one of the cleaning areas that she was assigned was the area where the bow was. So when she was cleaning around where the bow was, with one hand, she lifted up the bow, and the other hand, she cleaned underneath the bow and set it back down again. Another version of Ramayana was that she was with some friends and they were playing in a garden, and they were playing with something that got caught in a tree. And so she ran inside, picked up the bow, used the bow to take that thing that was caught in the tree and pull it down and put the bow back. There's 2 others. I can't remember the other ones right now.
So the other one, what she told Maharaj is that they were playing with a ball, and the ball went and goes into the bow, and Sita Mataji goes and hit the bow and take the ball.
Okay. Very good. And so Janaka thought, I can't have my daughter marry somebody who's weaker than she is. So at least he should be able to lift the bow and string the bow. And no one was able to do it. So one of the versions of Ramayana said they were really upset with Janaka. And so they conspired against him and this and that, and he had to do a big battle to the conspiring Kshatriyas. He had to defeat them. It was a big problem because who's going to marry my daughter? You can't even lift the bow. So he was very happy when Ram was able to lift the bow. He actually wanted, because he's a great personality. He's one of the 12 Mahajans. So he knows Ram will come. So he was very happy. Sita had a sister. Do you know Sita's sister's name? You know Sita's sister's name? It starts with a U. Urmila. So Viswamitra suggested to Janak, Lakshman and Urmila, what do you think? Oh, very good, very good, very good. So it was a double marriage. And then Viswamitra made another suggestion. You have a relative, and he has 2 daughters. What if the marriage was like a quadruple marriage? Oh, very good. So when Dasarath came, they all was a big celebration. And they all went back together. And then they met with Parshuram. You know who's Parshuram? Ah, good. Can tell me one sentence that you know about Parshuram. He carries a chopper, right? He was born in a Brahmin family, but Kshatriyas harmed his father. So he wanted to chastise the Kshatriyas. So although he was a Brahmana, he got a chopper in the mood of a Kshatriya, went all over the countryside 21 times and chopping the Kshatriyas. And many of them fled. And many of them got chopped. Do you know how many queens Dasarath had? Right? Do you know their names? Kaushalya, Sumitra, and Kaikeyi. Right? Is that right? But in addition to those three principal queens, he had 350 additional queens. How did that happen? Well, what the arrangement was, when Parshuram would come on his tour, if the king was engaged in a wedding, he wouldn't go and attack him. So every time Parshuram came around, he married another queen. 350 of them. But three principal queens. And we don't hear too much about the others. So Parshuram had Vishnu's bow. Ram broke the bow of Lord Shiva. And Parshuram heard that he broke the bow of Lord Shiva, and they were of similar strength and thickness. So he presented the bow of Vishnu to Ram and said, let's see if you can string this bow. Ram took it, tossed it a couple of times, tested it. He not only strung the bow and he drew the bow back, now he asked Parshuram, how am I supposed to use this? Because I drew the bow back. Now I've got to use it. And by that act of Lord Ramachandra bending the bow of Vishnu, Parshuram transferred all of his Shakti, all of his potency to Lord Ramachandra. And Ramachandra then said, I think you should, it's getting towards the evening, and you've taken a vow that you wouldn't be around during the nighttime, so you should go back. Nice pastime. Parshuram was a Shaktivesh avatar, and he transferred his Shakti to the source of all Shakti, to Lord Ramachandra. And that's the last we hear of Parshuram. That was it. And the bow of Vishnu later appears in the whole Ramayana story. The bow of Vishnu, if I recall correctly, was given to Varuna, and Varuna later returned it. Okay, here we go. Text 8. Carrying out the order of his father, who was bound by a promise to his wife, Lord Ramachandra left behind his kingdom, opulence, friends, well-wishers, residents, and everything else, just as a liberated soul gives up his life and went to the forest with Sita. Purport. Maharaj Dasarath had 3 wives. One of them, Kaikeyi, served him very pleasingly, and he therefore wanted to give her a benediction. Kaikeyi, however, said she would ask for the benediction when it was necessary. At the time of the coronation of Prince Ramachandra, Kaikeyi requested her husband to dethrone her son, Bharata, and send Ramachandra to the forest. Maharaj Dasarath, being bound by his promise, ordered Ramachandra to go to the forest according to the dictation of his beloved. And the Lord, as an obedient son, accepted the order immediately. He left everything without hesitation, just as a liberated soul or great yogi, gives up his life without material attraction. I mean, the story of Ramachandra is so sweet. It's like all the details make it sweeter and sweeter. It's hard just to read this without the details. It's just a sketch. So the story, I'm looking at you because you're the youngest one in the room here. So, you know the story of the promise that Dasarath gave to his wife Kaikeyi. You know the promise? Tell me what you know. You forget. Okay. Something like this. There was a big battle. Dasarath was badly wounded. Kaikeyi, a Kshatriya lady, a queen, she took the reins of his chariot and took him off the battlefield, nursed him to health, and he survived. And he was so grateful that she saved his life that he promised her, please request anything of me and it's yours. 2 boons, anything. Later. And she forgot. But someone reminded Kaikeyi. Who was the someone that reminded Kaikeyi? Starts with an M. I'm looking at our little girl here. You know. Mantra. You've heard her name? Mantra. What was unique about Mantra? She had a bodily feature that was very unique. She had a hunchback. You ever seen a hunchback? So her spine was bent. And she was very old and she was Kaikeyi's chief assistant. So she had royal privileges. And when she saw this big festivity going on for the coronation of Ram, and she heard what it was for, she went to Kaikeyi and severely rebuked her. And Kaikeyi, being innocent, said, oh, how wonderful. Here, take a necklace as a gift because you've given such a nice message. It's kind of culture. Someone brings a nice message, you give them a nice gift. It's part of Vedic culture. So Kaikeyi took the necklace and threw it on the ground and insulted her, scolded her, warned her, and polluted her mind. So Kaikeyi became convinced by Mantra that this plan was a wicked, evil plan to install Ram while her son Bharata was out of town visiting her relatives. His mother's father and relatives. So it's a trick. And after Ram's the king, then Bharata's in trouble. So what are you doing to your son? Etc., etc. She polluted her mind. And then persuaded her to take these 2 boons from Dasarath. It's very emotional. Very emotional. Something that I learned from reading commentary by Govindaraj. Govindaraj was one of the commentators on Ramayana. And he explains, I like this, only twice in the whole Ramayana does Valmiki use the word Yadrich Chaya. Yadrich Chaya is an interesting word. It means somehow or other. Means that there's no apparent cause. If there's an apparent cause, this was the cause. But when you don't see an apparent cause, it's Yadrich Chaya, somehow or other. And somehow or other, he explains, it's the game-changing event, because it's celebration and Ram's victorious and Ram this and Ram that, and then it's a game changer. Because now everything turns horrible. And the answer, the Adrichaya, is from within the heart of Kaikeyi. Ram inspired her to say what she said and do what she did, and because it led to his Leela. The rest of the Leela was two main things: give his association to the sages in the forest, and to kill Ravan. If he just stayed in Ayodhya, those two things might not have happened. So it arranged for those two things to happen. Go to the forest, don't become the king for 14 years. The second time, Valmiki, only two times, the second time was when Shurpanakha approached the cottage at Panchavati. Somehow or another, she was inspired, because that was another game-changing or plot-changing event. Because after giving association to all the sages, Lakshman said something. Lakshman said, I wonder how Bharata is doing. He must be feeling great pain and separation from you. So it was like, let's get on with business. He didn't say it, the business of killing Ravana and the demons, because they hadn't done any of that yet. So she came, and it caused a whole bunch of the wars, the battles with the demons, and so many other things that happened. Yadrichaya. It's a nice word. Text 9. While wandering in the forest, where he accepted a life of hardship, carrying his invincible bow and arrows in his hand, Lord Ramachandra deformed Ravana's sister, was actually Lakshmana, who was polluted with lusty desires, by cutting off her nose and ears. He also killed her 14,000 Rakshasa friends, headed by Kara, Trishira, and Dushana. There's a lot of, it took a lot of research from, actually I got help from a few people that know these things. The Kara and Trishiras, the Kara and Dushan, were not brothers. They were cousins. And when they became involved with Ravan, Ravana sent his two cousins, Kara and Dushan, to take responsibility for this outpost in Janistan. It's like so many details in Ramayana, so many details. The Dandak forest got the name Dandak from one of the 100 sons of Ikshvaku. Who was Ikshvaku? Ikshvaku was the son of Manu. And Manu was the son of Vivaswan. Vivaswan was the son of? No. Vivaswan was the son of? Vivaswan is the sun god. Who is the sun god the son of? Who are the sons of Diti and Kashyapa? Ah. So Ikshvaku and Kashyapa was one of the sons of Brahma. So Manu built the sun god, the son of the sun god, built the capital, Ayodhya, and he entrusted the capital, Ayodhya, to Ikshvaku. So he descended from the sun planet. This is the line of the Surya dynasty, the sun dynasty. Gets a little confusing. You got it? Brahma had a son, Brahma. And when some of Brahma's sons were different sages, Kashyapa was one of those sages, son of Brahma. Kashyapa became married. Kashyapa had one of his sons was the sun god named Vivaswan. Vivaswan had a son named Manu, Vivaswata Manu. Manu had a son named Ikshvaku. So Manu built Ayodhya and said to his son, you take responsibility for ruling in Ayodhya. He ruled the whole earth, Ikshvaku. And he had 100 sons. And one of those sons, by his chart, was clearly going to be a very bad person. So he gave him the name Danda. Danda means rod. He had to be punished. So he gave him, as a kingdom to rule, this wild forest area. And Danda built it up, became a flourishing place, and et cetera, et cetera. And sure enough, Danda messed up. Danda became attracted to the daughter of a sage living in the forest, and he violated the daughter of the sage living in the forest. And the sage living in the forest cursed Dandak, or Danda, that this forest will become a complete wasteland. He told all the other sages that were staying, within a week, you have to leave because it's going to become a wreck. And it became a wreck, became an abandoned place. Thus, Dandak forest. And because it was abandoned, that's where, the 14,000 soldiers of Kara and Dushan moved in, because it was neglected. It was under the leadership of, the rulership of the king from Ayodhya. It was part of Dasarath's kingdom, and the previous kings before Dasarath. We heard in the previous verse were the kings before Dasarath. But it was inhabited by Rakshasas. So Ram cleared out the Rakshasas in that forest. And the incident that inspired it was Shurpanakha. Shurpanakha had a husband. But Ravana, in the course of his travels around and beating up on people, he went to the kingdom where her husband lived, and in the heat of battle, he killed her husband. And he came back and said, gee, I'm sorry, I killed your husband. But you can stay under the care of our cousins, Karandushan. So that's how she ended up being in Janistan. She was just under the care of their, powerful generals. But she had, a really strong tongue. And so when her nose and her ears were caught, she went back and said heavy things to Karandushan. Look at this, take revenge. And they ended up, many things happened. All 14,000 soldiers, including Karandushan. And the third is Trishira. He's another relative, but he wasn't their brother, but another relative, connected to the Rakshasa dynasty. Very involved. But, Ram was clearing house. He came into the world to make the place nice. And there were some demons. So he cleaned it up. Vinashaya Chaduskatam. I think we'll just read one more verse. Text 10. Oh, King Parikshit. When Ravana, who had 10 heads on his shoulders, heard about the beautiful and attractive features of Sita, his mind was agitated by lusty desires, and he went to kidnap her. To distract Lord Ramachandra from his ashram, Ravana sent Maricha in the form of a golden deer. And when Lord Ramachandra saw that wonderful deer, he left his residence and followed it and finally killed it with a sharp arrow, just as Lord Shiva killed Daksha. And there wasn't somebody to put a goat's head back on Richa's head when he was finished. It's just little summary of the pastimes. And there's lots and lots and lots and lots of details, certainly in Valmiki Ramayana. But there are many places in Valmiki Ramayana where the story of Ramachandra is in summary told so many times. And there's a purpose for retelling the story so many times. It's like rubbing sandalwood on a flat stone, making sandalwood paste. It's just those that are familiar with hearing Ramayana again and again and again, just hearing these little excerpts of pastimes, the whole thing comes to mind, and the relish of the pastimes is tasted again and again and again. It's just the style of how Ramayana is written. It's meant to be sung. That's how Love and Kush did. And some persons are reciters of the Bhagavatam do. They just recite the verses. I guess they must stop and embellish and explain things also. And that's how it was memorized. It was passed on by singing it again and again and again. And again and again and again. These little doodads are blinking a lot. Is that what they're supposed to do? What does that tell you? That they're doing their thing? That's what it means. Okay. Any discussion or comments?
I have questions.
Yeah. Okay.
So, Krishna has
We have some remote people.
Krishna has symbols on his foot, right?
He has what?
Krishna.
Krishna has
He
what?
has symbol in his feet, right?
Signs, marks.
Signs, yes.
Yes, yes.
So does Ram have the same?
Oh, yeah. Not the same.
But different.
He has marked, but not the same.
Okay. And I have another question. It's related to Atma Nivedanam.
Yes,
So Bali Maharaj is a good example for that.
yes.
So like general people, like we are all doing bhakti, right? And before I go into that, like Ambarish Maharaj, his example is given in repeatedly, like how he used his body in bhakti. So would he be a good example for Atma Nivedan? And the other question is general people like us, when we are doing bhakti, how we can go close, or like how do we perceive Atma Nivedan in the age of Kali doing bhakti, general people like us? Is it even doable?
Well, it's doable. It's rare to achieve, but it's doable. And it's the second question first. We go in little steps. For us, self-surrender is in little steps. And it may, the little steps, it's like any system of yoga, where, like hatha yoga, you do something and you stretch a little bit, not too much, because you can hurt yourself. I know somebody that hurt themselves stretching too much. A little bit, and then you hold it, and then you relax. So, and then as you stretch and stretch and stretch, you can stretch further and stretch further. So like yoga, the hatha yoga, or asanas, the bhakti system is similar. You a little stretch, the Atma Nivedana stretch. And for us, everyday folks, a little bit is like a big, it's significant. But it's far from, those who are at the stage of perfection. But that's how we can do. And then we just keep, in this lifetime, continue to pursue and continue to pursue. And there are those great souls that achieve it. And so the second thing we can do besides stretch a little bit is we look to and call for the mercy of those who are very elevated. And by the association of those very elevated, then that stage can be reached. By the mercy of those who are very elevated, that stage can be reached. Not just by our doing exercise, stretching a little and stretching a little, but by mercy. Because that's essential for bhakti, getting mercy. And when we get mercy, it feels good. And when it feels good, we want to keep going. And if we're not feeling that I'm making progress and I'm feeling that connection with some higher power, a merciful higher personality, then the enthusiasm isn't the same. The enthusiasm stays kindled when we're getting mercy. So you have to be eager for it. And you get by associating with those that have attained higher stages, doesn't have to be perfection, but higher stages, then that's inspiring. And there's reciprocation, because effort and mercy, those two, effort and mercy. So your first question was, it's attainable. The second question, it's attainable, but gradually. And we need a whole lot of mercy and a reasonable amount of effort. Is Ambarish Maharaj an example of full self-surrender? He's primarily an example of engaging all of his senses, starting with the mind. The celebrated verse that Prabhupada quoted many times, Sa Vai Manak Krishna Padara Vindayo, that's spoken by Shukadev about Maharaj Ambarish. And the first thing he did was he fixed his mind. And after fixing his mind, then each of his senses, this and that and the other thing, he did. With his hands, he cleansed the temple. With his feet, he walked to the temple. With his eyes, he saw the form of the deity, etc. With his tongue, he chanted the glories of the Lord and tasted the remnants of the prasad offered to the Lord. He engages all of his senses. So in that sense, Atma Nivedana, but it's not the same as like Bali Maharaj, where he was just absolute, abject. Take everything from me, fantastic. Because it's yours. So that's not the common, your question was, can one say, is he a good example? He's not commonly referred to like that. He's commonly referred to as he started with his mind and engaged all of his senses in service. Because somebody may be good in, some of their senses, but he was good at everything. That's what he's honored for specifically. Nice question. Anything else?
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. So just like you explained about Ambarish Maharaj, that first thing was his mind was focused on Krishna, and then he engaged all his other senses. But in my case,
It's the other way around.
yeah, I mean, my mind is not on Krishna, but I mean, the heart is there, mind is not there. And I think I'm engaging somehow in the services. So is that bhakti or is that not bhakti?
It's bhakti. It's definitely bhakti. But the chief of the senses is the mind. And that chief of the senses, the mind, also has a particular orientation. And engaging the senses will help bring the mind. But it's not going to, in and of itself, the practice, in and of itself, is not going to bring the mind. It requires a surrender, a mode of surrender. Of course, it takes a mode of surrender just to keep doing service steadily over some period of time. But for the mind to go to Krishna, then when that's locked in, then the senses are locked in. They won't deviate. And if the mind is not locked in, the senses can deviate or can be pulled this way, that way. As we know, manmana, the first, think of Krishna. Or yena tena pakarena mana Krishne niveshayat. Somehow or other, always think of Krishna. Never forget Krishna. Sarva vidhi nishedhasyur etayor eva kinkara. All of the vidhis in nishedhas, the do's and the don'ts, are servants of that one principle, the mind. Mana Krishne niveshayat. It's not optional. It's keep working at it. Mind is stubborn, but keep working at it. Anything else? Our host, anything? No? What's your favorite story from Ramayana? Put you on the spot. Favorite story from Ramayana, or any story, a story that you like, not necessarily favorite, something that you relish when you hear, you go, that's nice.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is the Koiki, the character, that the Koiki, the Manthara, the relationship, it's like a, very strange to me. It's like, when we are talking about, something in the family life, and then someone is trying to destroy the family. So it's very strange to me.
It's strange.
Yeah, very strange relationship that they're trying to destroy the Manthara is basically trying to destroy the family. That's what I see.
Her intention is something else. She thinks she's the well-wisher. People that are a little bonkers, they think they're doing the right thing. She's loyal. She's fiercely loyal to the person who she serves, Kaikeyi. And she's convinced this is a trick. It's a malicious trick. Why is this happening while your son is away? It's a trick. Now, I'm surprised. It comes up later, but I'm surprised she didn't say, remind Kaikeyi that before you were married, a promise that Dasarath gave to your father was that your son would become the king. You know that one, right?
Yes.
Yep. So she didn't say it. Why didn't she say it? Well, she wasn't given, the remembrance by super soul within her heart to say it. But that was, that was a big card. She could have played that big card. Instead, she was just, I'm protecting your self-interest. And your self-interest is your son. And your self-interest also is, if Ram becomes king, you know what that's going to mean? You're going to grovel. You're now the favorite queen, but Kaikeyi is going to be the mother of the new king. You just lost some points. You're not going to be in the favor of Dasarath anymore. You'll be like a left out lady. And your son's going to be, who knows what's going to happen to him. Ram may want to get rid of him because he's competition. No, she's got all these wicked ideas, but she's thinking this is the right advice. So her intention is not breaking up families. Her intention is using her crooked-mindedness, like her crooked back, crooked-mindedness, to help the person who she's totally dedicated to serving come out victorious. And if even it meant, dirty business, that's okay. And justifies the means. You come out on top, your son comes out on top. That's the way it should go. So some people think like that. They're not very far thinking. And because Kaikeyi was innocent and not what's described in Valmiki Ramayana, she wasn't worldly wise. She couldn't look ahead and see consequences. And when she locked in, a bad quality was she became very stubborn. She had the quality of being stubborn. So mantra, did a bad thing for sure. But she thought she was doing a good thing. And that's what ignorance is. People think they're doing a good thing. It's actually very destructive. But ask them, I'm doing a good thing. Here's how it's a good thing. I'll tell you how it's a good thing. Something destructive is good. That's ignorance. Anything else? You have anything online? Oh, look at that. Where's our microphone?
A question from Uttam Bhakta Prabhu.
Okay.
When we study scriptures, there are principles and details.
Yes.
My understanding is that principles nourish our bhakti, whereas details help preach it to others.
Help.
Help preach to others.
Well, I don't know if that's a correct statement. I think principles help nourish others too.
Is that a correct understanding? Would you like to add something?
It's an interesting twist. But the details I mean, when Prabhupada was presenting Krishna consciousness to people that knew nothing, that was, that was a lot of his audience. Let's say in the West, he didn't go to details because that's convincing. He emphasized principles, and he exhibited a life of those principles, and that was what was compelling. So I don't think you hit a winner with that one. Something else? Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.